Om Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today's topic is the beginning of the second canto. In the previous session, we focused on the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and we gave it, we basically attributed the use of the mantra to invoke in our minds and give us an opportunity to connect to the absolute form of the Lord, basically to the absolute truth. We distinguished the absolute truth from a definition or a mention of God. Yeah, we could call him God or we could call him the absolute truth. Srimad Bhagavatam has been authored very specifically for us to be able to approach the absolute truth. And the absolute truth fundamentally involves the definition that there isn't anything beyond that personality. So if we were to talk about, for example, even Sri Balaram is non-different from Krishna. The only difference between Balaram and Krishna, they say, is the color. He is the immediate direct expansion of the Lord, and he has incarnated for the purpose of service. He is Sevaka Bhagavan. When he observes Krishna and he wants Krishna and wants to basically facilitate Krishna in service, he is the one who steps out of Vrindavan. He expands into the four quadruple incarnations. Every incarnation comes from Balaram, including the super soul in our hearts. So all the Purusha avatars, they're all manifestations of Balaram. So Karanodakashai Vishnu, Shirodakashai Vishnu, Garbhodakashai Vishnu. And the reason why Sri Balaram does not want Krishna to even step out is because he doesn't want him to be disturbed in his most confidential pastimes of Vraja. And in Vraja, Krishna, who is the origin of Godhead, who is the supreme personality of Godhead, yeah, he basically engages in pastimes that involve and are inclusive of every type of rasa or taste in relationships that we can conceive of. So when we talk about the word rasa, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, talks about the taste or the juice that comes from the mango, the fruit, giving the fact that, different mangoes have different flavors, but then the nature of a mango is to be known by the rasa, the taste, and everybody wants to partake of the rasa. So in a similar fashion, if there is an all-inclusive taste or mellow of relationship, that is to be found in Vraja with Krishna. And as a consequence, Sri Balaram, he does not want Krishna to be disturbed in this extraordinary pastime and the most inclusive of all rasas that is found in Vrindavan Dham. And as a consequence, he says that I will step out and I will carry out what is to be done to maintain, create, and destroy through my various pastimes and through my various expansions. Now, this is the definition of the absolute truth. The absolute truth does not have an origin beyond himself. Only Krishna can fit into that picture. Only he fits into the bill. And this is to distinguish him from Balaram, who is an immediate expansion, who is the supreme personality of God himself, but at the same time, Krishna is the origin of Balaram. Balaram is contained within Krishna, yeah, in terms of the origin. So as a consequence, what we would want to say here is that when we use the word absolute truth, we are defining two things. Number one, that there isn't anything beyond the personality of God. There isn't anything beyond Krishna. He does not have an origin. He is the source of all incarnations. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. This is the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam. He is the source of all incarnations. And the second definition of the absolute truth also comes from the extraordinary rasa or relationship that is found in the most confidential pastimes of Vraja. So the rasa found in Vraja, the mellow of relationships found in Vraja, are all inclusive. They include everything found in every other Vaikuntha Loka and undoubtedly in the material sky as well. The material sky, it's distorted, it's a perversion, it's distorted, it is not quite what it is in the spiritual sky. However, the origin of everything that we experience in terms of relationships is in Vraja. Everything that is to be experienced in the different avatars of the Lord is to be experienced in Vraja, because in Vraja you have Sarva Rasa Sar. Sarva Rasa Sar. Everything is contained within the mellow of relationships found in Vraja. So this is how we define the absolute truth. We use the word absolute truth to define, basically contain all of these. And the word Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya is basically stressing upon the personality of Krishna, who is the son of Vasudeva. It is also stressing upon the personality of Krishna, who basically contains all the other rasas and all the other incarnations and all the other aspects of existence. So as a consequence, what we are trying to talk about is that we are also talking about the Vasudev platform here. The Vasudev platform essentially is a state of consciousness in the spiritual sky where you're not only liberated, but you're also in touch with and you're also experiencing the rasas that are all inclusive in Vraja. So this is the Vasudev platform. This gives us an understanding of Krishna, gives us an understanding of the various incarnations, gives us an acute, very good understanding of what happens in the material sky, the interrelationships between the demigods and the personalities of Godhead, who are Krishna's expansions and Krishna himself, the various categories of personalities who help and assist Krishna in managing the material universe. Yeah, all of this is contained within the word Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, within that mantra. So that is the reason for using the mantra to invoke the presence of Krishna in our hearts as we begin the discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, which contains the subject matter of Vasudeva. It contains the subject matter of the absolute truth, the representation of the absolute truth. Could everyone put yourself on mute, please? Thank you. Yeah, it contains the definition of the absolute truth. Now, today is an interesting topic. We're going to extend our discussion to the second canto. We're going to go through perhaps 10 verses of the first chapter of the second canto. It is an interesting topic because it's a topic that holds our interest simply because we all struggle with these issues. And as a consequence, it helps in having a discussion. And we just need to understand what it is so that from the perspective of Srimad Bhagavatam, so we can move forward. Now let's go back to text 38 of the first canto, which is the last chapter. This is Parikshit Maharaj questioning Sukadev Goswami. Please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all of this to me. So this was the question. Now, the second verse, which is verse 1, starts with Sukadev Goswami. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, "My dear king, your question is glorious because it's very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists." Yeah, it is glorious because it is very beneficial for all kinds of people. What does it mean? It means that your question and your thoughts are simply not rising up because you have to leave your body in 7 days. You're basically thinking of the welfare of the entire universe. This is a Vaishnava conception that we are always existing to serve others. So Parikshit Maharaj, when he's asking the question, in that question, Sukadev Goswami is able to see the sincerity of the questioner. He's practically going deeper within Parikshit Maharaj's heart and then testifying and saying that your question does not just pertain to your well-being, it pertains to the well-being of everybody. Yeah, someone who is thinking of everybody. Now, we would just like to understand why this statement is being made by Sukadev Goswami, where he is making an inference from just this one question and statement by Parikshit Maharaj. He's making an inference. He's first making an inference that Parikshit Maharaj is thinking of the whole world. He also knows that the question itself is most beneficial for everyone. He is practically according the position of a sadhu to Parikshit Maharaj. Even though Parikshit Maharaj comes from a royal lineage and he is a king, he is being accorded the position of a sadhu. Now, what is the meaning of a sadhu? The sadhu definition on the Vaishnava theology is very different. Yeah, sadhu, according to Srila Haridas Thakur, is a person who is completely dependent on Harinam. If you're completely dependent on Harinam, then you're considered to be a sadhu. Yeah. The external behavior of a sadhu, of being humble, being soft-natured, being Brahmanical, etc., these are manifestations that would occur over a period of time. But the primary qualification for a sadhu is that he should completely depend on Harinam. He should be dependent on the chanting of the holy names. This is the fundamental definition. What does it mean when one is dependent on the chanting of the holy names? When one is dependent on the chanting of the holy names, it means that person is dependent on Krishna, because Krishna and the holy names are non-different. So a definition of a sadhu, a true definition, is one who is completely dependent on Krishna because he is dependent on Harinam. This is the definition of sadhu according to our Namacharya. This is basically the definition given by Srila Haridas Thakur. So, one who is completely dependent on Harinam also has qualities of deep compassion and humility. Compassion and humility are gifts of Harinam. Compassion and humility are gifts of Harinam. Compassion is the nature of a jiva when they are completely Krishna conscious. The extent to which a jiva is Krishna conscious, to that extent they can be compassionate. What is compassion? The jiva can understand the different personalities. They understand sambandha. They understand abhideya. They understand prayojana tattva. They understand the three different pillars of Vaishnavism, where they understand that without Krishna sambandha, there cannot be service, and without service, there's no question of experiencing prema. And this particular compassion that comes up in the heart is to see living entities in separation. Why do we say that this is the definition of compassion? It is because this is the compassion of Mahaprabhu. When he descended in the mood of Radharani. When he saw the jivas in separation, but at the reality, not even experiencing a tinge of grief in separation from Krishna, there was intense compassion that comes forth, because only Radharani can understand what it is to be separated from Krishna. And when she sees the jivas being separated from Krishna, her heart breaks down, and that is Mahaprabhu's compassion that is being passed down to Lord Nitai. And Nitai distributes the compassion by empowering others to chant. Yeah, we spoke about it a few sessions back. So this definition of compassion and humility that comes from Harinam. The deeper one's absorption, greater would be their understanding of Sambandha Tattva. Greater would be their understanding of suffering. You see? Srila Prabhupada, when he was passing by, I mentioned this in, I think, several times in several classes over the past year, when he was passing by and walking in America next to a clubhouse, a wealthy clubhouse where you had these old wealthy people in America. They were playing golf. And it is said that devotees saw tears streaming down Srila Prabhupada's eyes. And one wonders, who would cry for wealthy old men who are having a good time on a golf course? Who would cry for wealthy old men enjoying themselves? Srila Prabhupada did. This is the compassion of a sadhu, because he could see that these personalities, they were at the very end of their lives, and they were engaging in very frivolous, very wasteful activity, and they were engaging in activities which practically is going to get them nowhere. Tears were coming out of Srila Prabhupada's eyes. Now, this is the compassion of a Vaishnav. Okay? A regular person who is soft-hearted would cry for someone who is suffering, because they can perceive the suffering externally. Let's say someone is injured, someone is ill, someone has gone through severe trauma, then an average person can be soft-hearted enough to cry, because it can be moving to see that person vulnerabilities, to see things happen, which is fine. This is an average person. They don't understand Sambandha Tattva. They don't understand Abhideya. They do not know what is Prayojana. They don't know what is Prema. So this is an average person's compassion. This is an average person's compassion. And an average person's compassion is devoid of understanding. It does not come from the platform of Harinam. It does not come from the platform of coming in touch with Mahaprabhu's compassion, whereby you understand the spiritual sky and you're crying out and you understand that everyone, whether they're rich, poor, wealthy, whether they're rich, poor, healthy, or sick, or in need of help or not in need of help, even those who are extraordinarily well situated in life, everybody needs help. This particular understanding comes from understanding Sambandha Tattva. This comes from understanding the norm of what is expected in the spiritual sky. This is the definition of a sadhu, because a sadhu's compassion, who is chanting Harinam, is very different from a mundane person's compassion, which is based on their understanding of affliction to the body. So the output of time, energy, money, which goes out from an average person in redressing these issues of life, these issues of the world, is very differently prioritized by sadhus, because sadhus themselves feel that this is not real compassion. You are actually doing some window dressing. You are basically taking care of things which ultimately in the long run don't matter. This by no means is a discouragement to those who are assisting those in need. A Vaishnava should always assist those in need. It is 100% required that we at least have the softness in our heart to be able to reach out and assist those who are in need. Yeah, that is the actual Vaishnava platform. So we shouldn't really philosophize our way out of being soft-hearted. Sometimes it can happen. We could be philosophically right, but we could be wrong. Yeah, it could be the right thing to do, but maybe it may not be the right way to do it. Maybe it is wrong, the way you extend yourself. So we don't want to really make ourselves hard-hearted enough. But at the same time, it is very important for us to understand what is Vaishnava compassion. It is very important for us to understand what is the definition of a sadhu. It is very important for us to understand how the sadhu develops compassion. Compassion is the source of power. And compassion is the gift of Harinam. Nam gives us compassion. When you feel extraordinarily compassionate and when you're looking at someone in the road, like Prabhupada did, when he was watching all those rich old men playing golf, and compassion poured out of his heart, and he was crying, saying, these are people who basically do not even know what they're doing. Yeah, they're fools. They're engaging in activity which basically, without knowing that death is around the corner. So basically, this compassion comes from Harinam. But when you cry out in compassion and you don't have the power to assist, that particular condition is humility. When you cry out in compassion and do not have the power to assist, you're humble. You're crying out in compassion. You're a real Vaishnava because you're chanting Harinam. And as a consequence, your heart has softened and you have understood Prayojana Tattva. You have understood Abhideya. You have understood Prayojana Tattva and Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. You have fully understood the relationships and the scope of what is possible in human existence. You've understood that, you experienced it. As a consequence, there's compassion in the heart. This compassion is extraordinarily qualified by knowledge. Yeah. And when this compassion comes on board, then what does happen is that if you can't assist, you cry out in humility, power comes to the person. Krishna wants to assist. He says, okay. Yeah. He says, you can't do anything because you feel that you want to assist, but you don't want to assist. I will help you. Krishna starts giving power. So in reality, what we are talking about is that Srila Sukadev Goswami saw in Parikshit Maharaj's heart the Vaishnava compassion of wanting to assist the whole world. He saw the Vaishnava compassion of a sadhu in Parikshit Maharaj's heart. And this was not particularly based on a lack of understanding. Parikshit Maharaj did not have a lack of understanding. He understood Sambandha Tattva. He understood Abhideya. He understood Prayojana to a large extent. The point is that he already had a relationship with Krishna. It was Krishna himself who granted him a second lease of life, so to speak. There was so much intervention by Krishna in his life. As a consequence, this was a real sadhu. And the sadhu was pouring forth a question. When the sadhu is asking a question, he wants to benefit the whole world. Yeah, he wants to benefit the whole world. That is the statement that is being made here. And this is a very important revelation as well, because the ability to think about others and to think about and wanting to assist the whole universe comes from Vaishnava compassion. It comes and has its origin in sadhana. It has its origin in coming in touch with Nam very seriously. And without coming in touch with Nam, one will not understand Sambandha. They will not understand their relationship with Krishna. They will not understand, or they would not be fully comprehending the Vasudeva platform. They wouldn't know the absolute truth. And as a consequence, their compassion, there would be certain lacks in their understanding, which practically would cause issues in them being able to serve. We spoke of this fact in the previous two sessions, that you can't really serve unless you know who you are. You need to know who you are. You need to know who is Krishna. Then service becomes quite feasible. Until then, we are serving according to our abilities. Until then, we are serving according to what we desire, which is perfectly fine. But we need to know that service itself requires a deeper sambandha. It requires sambandha. It requires an understanding. Mother Yashoda does not have to be taught what to do in relationship to Krishna, because she has sambandha. Nanda Maharaj does not have to be taught on what he should do in relationship to Krishna, because he has sambandha. When these personalities of Vraja, they're calling out Krishna's names, they're calling out with the complete connection in their hearts. This is Shuddhanam. We use the word Shuddhanam. The pure name is that which is imbued with Sambandha Gyan, and there is action, Abhideya, which is also imbued with Sambandha Gyan, and then one realizes and experiences prema. Yeah, because prema requires all of these to love someone. Yeah, and then there's more prayer sambandha, there's greater level of abhideya. So it's a cycle. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita as well, that you should love me, fall in love with me, do not fear, give up every other connection that you have as a priority, prioritize me in the forefront, and then you would be able to understand what service to offer. So this is basically Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita as well. So the point we're trying to make here is that when someone wants to think about the whole world, a perfect Vaishnava is the most capable of extending compassion to the whole creation and asking questions and putting themselves in a place where questions and answers can be gotten, which will benefit creation after creation. Srimad Bhagavatam and the questions of Parikshit Maharaj and the answers that were received from Sukadev Goswami have been benefiting the whole of creation for millenniums, unimaginable. So do not underestimate how powerful a dialogue this is and how powerful a question this was. That's the reason why Sukadev Goswami found it qualified enough to basically appreciate the question of Parikshit Maharaj, to appreciate his presence. So what does he say? Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. This is the second point he's trying to make. You see, the first point is, my dear king, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Who is it approved by? It is approved by all of those who are on the path of transcendence. So it's fascinating to see that one question was understood by Sukadev Goswami as being all beneficial and most beneficial to the entire creation. And he is basically giving answers which are going to benefit millennium after millennium of jivas. Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. Now, in this, I forgot to wear my earphones, and they're starting loudspeakers. So I'm just going to wear my earphones. Pardon me. I didn't mean to interrupt. Someone is testing the microphone here behind me in Braja. But they do wonderful things. You know, the loudspeaker here goes on, for most part, it's katha. So It's nice. Okay, so those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society. Now here, Srila Sukadev Goswami is using two words. Shrota Vyadini Rajendra, Nrinam Shanti Sahasrasaha, Apasyatam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. Two words. Griheshu Grihamedinam. At home, Grihamedinam is someone who is basically in the delusion of married life. Grihastha is one who is using the vehicle of marriage for the purpose of spirituality. So here's where Varnashram comes in. One has to realize what is Varnashram. And today we are talking about ashram and varna as well, for that matter. When we talk about ashram, we are talking about the subject of being in brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyas. And being in any one of these ashrams is to facilitate the journey of spiritual growth. It is not so much that it is important, or neither is it a transcendental topic. Varnashram is not a transcendental topic. It is extraordinarily situated in the modes of nature. Yeah, it is simply an efficient vehicle for executing life on the planet, and one can choose the ashram based on their propensity. Yeah, one can choose the ashram based on the propensity. So one can examine their propensity of wanting to involve themselves in this world, and one can examine their need for a partner of the opposite gender, and then take on one of the ashrams which is most appropriate. But every ashram is just a vehicle. It is not the goal of transcendence, it is a vehicle. Varnashram is a matter which is definitely within the scope of the modes of nature. We are choosing an ashram for us to be able to traverse and travel through and overcome the challenges that one can experience in the modes of nature as we proceed further. So this is ashram. The ashram definition itself is it's a vehicle. One may be a brahmachari or a sannyasi or a vanaprasthi or a grihastha, but it is for the purpose of using it as a vehicle. Now, oftentimes, I've given this example. You might have heard it in the past year. There really isn't anything wrong in being in any one of the vehicles that are being shared here. One can be a grahastha, and we have had great grahastha acharyas. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a grahastha acharya in our parampara. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had many children. He was very involved in society. He was an administrator. He was a magistrate. He was very involved in the literary society. He was an author. He was interacting with society at different levels. And he is definitely represented as one of the most prominent Goswamis, the Acharyas in our line, in our lineage. He was a Grahastha. He had, I think, more than a dozen children. If you go to his home in Mayapur, his room had I think it still does. I'm not sure. It has a very, very thick door, a wooden door. It is said that because there were so many children, and there used to be so much noise, that he used to shut the door so that he could do his bhajan. The point I'm just trying to make is that he contributed immensely, and he was one of the most primary, I would say, stalwarts, pioneers of Krishna consciousness in recent times after Mahaprabhu's departure. He practically re-established the Dham in Mayapur. And this was a Grihastha. So Grihastha ashram itself is not a defective ashram. We do not want to look at the ashram from the perspective of what is defective. The opportunity for spiritual life is certainly constrained in the Grihastha ashram. It is constrained because if you're going to be putting in efforts to go to work, make a living and take care of your family needs, etc., then the time that is being put out for the purpose of maintaining the family is definitely a time that can be used in Krishna's service in certain ways. So there's an argument that can be presented that it is not as efficient as the brahmacharya ashram, which is true. because in the brahmachari, sannyas, and the vanaprastha ashram, one basically does not essentially engage themselves in the act of maintaining a family. And as a consequence, a lot of time and energy, prana, can be given, a lot more can be given to Krishna, simply because they are not exerting themselves in the direction of family life. So in that sense, there's a greater level of contribution that can be had through the through the brahmachari and the sannyas ashrams. But the grahastha ashram has been shown to be no less efficient if one is Krishna conscious by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's a vehicle. And so is the case with, for example, someone in the renounced order. So we had Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was a very, very strict celibate, right from the start to the finish. We had Srila Prabhupada, who basically started out as a grahastha but then transitioned into renounced order. These choice of ashrams are vehicle choices which facilitate one's journey and one's Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, everyone put yourself on mute, please. If you have, yeah, just search for the mute button, please. So this is basically an opportunity for service. This is basically an opportunity. It's a vehicle for service. That's what this is. The ashram is a vehicle for service. Now, an example can be given as to where the problem lies. The problem does not lie so much in the vehicle. The problem lies in aspects where the vehicle is allowed to become more important than Krishna consciousness. So the issue is as follows. Someone could have a preference to travel light. They get into a train, they start in Jagannath Puri, and they want to come to Mayapur. And their preference is, I'm doing an overnight journey and I would like to travel light. So I'm going to take a gamcha, I'm going to take a toothbrush, maybe, extra set of clothes, and I'm done. You see, this is one way of traveling, which is perfectly fine because they just want to travel light. They don't want to be bothered by the baggage. They just want to travel light. But then there are others who also want to make the journey from Jagannath Puri to Mayapur. I'm just giving an example. No significance of taking of Jagannath Puri in Mayapur, but just an example because it's an overnight journey. There are others who want to travel and who want to make the same journey. And when they want to make the same journey, they might feel that they would need a pillow because the train berths are not comfortable. They might feel that they might need some extra prasadam because they could get hungry at 10 o'clock in the night, or 11 in the night. They might feel that they might need extra this and extra that. So there's a lot of baggage which is being taken because that's the comfort of this individual who is traveling. So he has made a choice of traveling in a certain way because that's what is suitable for him in his psychology. And then someone else is traveling light because that's what is suitable for them in their psychology. The issue is not so much in terms of what you carry in this journey or how you travel. It's all a vehicle. However, the issue is when the fellow who is traveling light, he spends 10 years of his life traveling light, gets into the train, and then he has a gamcha, he has a toothbrush, and then starts complaining that I don't have prasadam, I don't have a pillow, and this is not good, and that is not good. If that fellow who's traveling light starts complaining, that's an issue because then it becomes a distraction to service. Yeah, then he gets distracted. I don't have this, I don't have that. It's an issue. Now, an ashram choice has been made which is inappropriate. Then you have the grahastha ashram guy or someone who is traveling very heavy. They carry a pillow, they carry extra prasadam, they have different kinds of pots and pans and everything else because that's what they need in their life. They feel the journey would be cumbersome if they did not have all of these comforts. They get into the train compartment, then they start complaining. Oh, look at this baggage, look at this, look at that. They start complaining to the point where the entire journey is spent in managing the extra baggage. That's an issue as well. So that's the problem we are talking about. The problem is not so much in the choice of the ashram. The ashram itself is a vehicle. You get into the proper vehicle to get to the destination based on what your propensities are, and that is perfectly fine. Each and every vehicle has its characteristics to accommodate certain kind of conditioning, and it allows us to reach our destination safe and sound. This is the purpose of a vehicle. The issue is when you start complaining. The issue is when we can't do much for Krishna consciousness because we have gotten into a circumstance of the vehicle itself where the maintenance of the vehicle becomes even bigger than Krishna consciousness. That's the issue. So an ashram itself is not a liability, it is a vehicle. Now, in these concept of ashram, If the concept of ashram as a vehicle is forgotten and one begins to exist for the vehicle itself, then we have the concept of grahamedi. The grahamedi conception is where, as a person gets into, for example, in the modern day, we would say they get into a corporation, they aspire for promotions, they aspire for higher and higher positions, which they do get over a period of time, either by nature or by effort. And as they get those promotions, they get higher salaries. When they get higher salaries, they buy bigger homes, more number of cars, bigger mortgage, bigger rental payments, bigger monthly payments, bigger amount of debt. This is the issue with Grahamedi ashram, the Grahamedi concept. The Grahamedi concept is basically a conditioned concept where there's always a lot of effort being put into the vehicle because you are envious of someone else who has a vehicle of this kind. There might be a neighbor who has a Mercedes. Yeah. These days, you can get big cars for small leases. So I'm not even going to talk about it. But the point is, there might be a neighbor who has a Mercedes, who has a bigger home. And then when we start becoming envious, saying, I need that, then the whole problem begins. Yeah. You start working very, very hard. The vehicle, now what we started out as a vehicle for life, that becomes the goal of life. Then grahastha becomes a grahamedi, the delusion of looking at things around us and starting to window shop will narrow down our focus to someone who is constantly focused on the immediate surrounding of family. This is a very, very envious platform, the Grahamedi platform. Why is it envious? It is envious because the Grahamedi platform involves a lot of desires. If there are material desires which cannot be fulfilled, one develops this envious nature. They look at others. Not only do they feel that they should have it, they also start feeling remorse if someone else has it and they have it. They feel that they should have it and the other person should not have it. They should lose it. I should get my good car, good home. The other person should lose everything. This is enviousness. I should get what he has. This is jealousy. The difference between jealousy and the enviousness is enviousness basically does not want the other fellow to exist. I don't want him to exist. That's the reason why we say someone becomes very envious when they look at someone and then they judge them on their physical appearance and actually feel that they shouldn't be looking the way they are. This is enviousness. They are basically feeling that I just can't adjust to this person's existence because they are looking a certain way. This is enviousness. So this enviousness becomes a part of the Grahamedi ashram because Grahamedi conception, I wouldn't want to call it an ashram. It is either Grahastha ashram, which is a vehicle for Krishna consciousness, or it is Grahamedi. Grahamedi involves enviousness, it involves delusion. Grahamedi involves a very narrow scope of understanding. Now the person has completely forgotten the greater scope of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the greater scope of actually working for Krishna, actually being beneficial to the entire universe, which is the Vaishnava idea. The person now becomes extraordinarily focused on my house, my thing, my this, my that. It's a very, very narrow level of consciousness. This is the Grahamedi platform. In this particular Grahamedi platform, there's great enviousness. And this enviousness comes because there are material desires. You need to have material desires. When there are material desires, one becomes envious. That's the origin. Yeah. When there are material desires, one becomes envious of the other person's attributes. If there are no material desires, then there's a question of envy. The root cause of envy comes from material desires. Yeah, it comes from material desires. It's basically a dangerous, dangerous position because it has no position or no scope in the spiritual sky. You can be jealous in the spiritual sky. You can't be envious. You can be jealous in the spiritual sky. So Radharani, Srimati Radharani may have competition. The competition who want to get Krishna's attention can be jealous of the attention which Srimati Radharani is getting. However, they can't be envious. They can't really think that Srimati Radharani should disappear. That is enviousness. That has no place whatsoever in the rasa that is found in Vrindavan. It has no place whatsoever in the rasa that is found. Yeah. Why do we say being envious like a snake? Why do we say being envious like a snake? We say that because the snake doesn't even consider who is in front of them. A poisonous snake would strike out viciously and inject poison in a 3-year-old which is carrying a stick, and also a 30-year-old man who is carrying a stick. The snake cannot distinguish. The snake basically has this motivation. You should get destroyed. I do not want you to exist. The snake starts striking out. This is basically the position of enviousness. Enviousness basically is rooted in the concept of I should exist and someone else shouldn't. And this has its roots in material desires. This is the Grahamedi conception. The Grahamedi conception is, first of all, we have expanded our empire, where the empire or the vehicle has become more complicated than life itself. The so-called ashram choice of being married has become the goal of life. It has become so complicated that you're constantly putting extraordinary attention just managing that vehicle. And then if you look at others who have a little bit more facility for managing the vehicle, we become envious of them. We start desiring things which the other person has because we are extraordinarily narrowly focused on the sense gratificatory objectives of the family. Yeah, they will be surrounded by family, they'll be surrounded by friends who are not necessarily Krishna conscious, but then they would go after them. They all were constantly desiring things. So they would look at the neighbors, or the neighbor has put this up, they've kind of remodeled the house, I must do it. Yeah, then the objective comes. Now the ashram choice has become the goal of life in the Grahamedi conception. The Grahamedi conception is delusional. They have become delusional, they have become envious, they are filled with all kinds of material desires. The scope of enactment has been narrowed down to family. Yeah, it's a very, I would say, it's a little better. It's a little better than the platform where one might claim that they are doing a little bit more than than for thinking of themselves. There's a platform of selfishness, and then there's a platform of doing more than being selfish, which is I'm selfish for my own needs. And then we start thinking, oh, I have a family, so serving the family. Then we start thinking, this is a tribe, I belong to a certain kind of group, I belong to a certain kind of nation, start serving them. Then we start serving a race, nation, tribe, community, etc. Then it becomes a very narrow understanding of who we are. This is Grahamedi, delusional. On the other hand, the Grahastha platform is very different. The Grahastha platform comes from an understanding that I must make a choice because there's a necessity for a vehicle for me to execute Krishna consciousness. Now, in the Grahamedi conception, we cannot have sublime thoughts. There's a lot of agitation of senses, there's a lot of agitation in the mind. Where is the question of having any kind of thought which is geared towards the well-being of the whole world? It is not possible. In the Grahastha ashram, these opportunities do exist because one recognizes that they are in a certain kind of a vehicle. The vehicle has an objective of taking us from point A to point B. The vehicle has a certain characteristic. If the vehicle is maintained in a certain simple way, it can be handled. We should not allow the vehicle to become life itself. This understanding, which is more sublime, it doesn't come when the vehicle becomes life, which is the Grahamedi. So for Grahamedis, the thought of the world and bettering the world and compassion of a Vaishnava is unheard of. You cannot have that compassion in the heart of a Grahamedi, because for them, they can't really think of the well-being of others because they're so narrowly defining success. For them, success is their well-being. They even feel envious of others who have a little bit more than them. So for them, they can't really go beyond the concept of their family, their neighbors, their surroundings, their tribe, their community, their race, their nation. It's a very, very, I would say, narrow scope of what they are. And this is what the world is. You would notice that today. It's the world. Yeah, this is exactly what the world is. This is Grahamedi. And in that particular conception, one really can't be benefiting others. You can't have a concept of, I would like to serve the entire creation. That is the reason why, when you have Grahamedis populating the world, they can't cooperate with each other because they're envious of each other in the first place. One country is envious of the other country. So when one country is envious of the other country, how can a group of envious people get together and do something useful? That's the reason why United Nations is a complete failed project. The United Nations, the UN group in America, the UN, United Nations, the United Nations General Assembly, is a failed project because this is a group of envious people who have gotten together. They can't really produce anything good for the world. How do you bring together a group of very envious snakes, put them in one room, and then basically have them come up with a solution which is going to benefit the entire world and creation? Not going to happen. Who can benefit creation? You need to be a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava who understands Sambandha, who understands Abhideya, who understands Prayojana Tattva. Someone who has a deeper understanding of what is the Vasudeva platform. Someone who has an understanding of the interrelationships between the personality of Godhead and the Jivas and Shiva, etc. That is a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava can benefit the world because they're completely non-envious and they're extraordinarily compassionate and they carry humility which will draw power from the Supreme Lord himself. So Srila Sukadeva Goswami here is basically distinguishing the two platforms. Now, what is the cure for the disease of enviousness? The cure for the disease of enviousness is menial service. Do seva, which is menial. If one is envious, go often to the temple and clean up. Wait until everybody has gone and clean up and then weep and say, please forgive me. Yeah, that is the seva that needs to be done to remove enviousness from the heart. Because by doing cleanup seva, one would lose every other kind of identity that they have in their hearts. They can't be thinking they are PhDs. They can't be thinking they are professionals. They can't be thinking they're rich. They can't be thinking they are good looking, bad looking, etc. They are thinking that I'm a servant. When they hold a broom in the hand and they are sweeping the temple, they have given up every other identity. When you give up all the other identities which are nonsensical, which are causing issues, enviousness slowly, steadily comes down. Humility comes in. So seva is the cure. Menial service is the cure. Doing more and more menial service cleanses our heart of envious nature. It removes it because then we are accepting of everybody else. We hold the broom in our hands. We hold a mop in our hand. We are accepting of the whole world because we are so wretched in the first place. Isn't it? It's so natural. Yeah. We are not, we are somewhere down there. We're just sweeping. How could you think of anything bigger than that? You can't really think that I'm so big, I'm this, I'm that. So it slowly, steadily cleanses our nature. So this is the cure. So Shukadeva Goswami is basically talking about this conception of the Grahamedis and the Grahasthas and saying the Grahamedis cannot have these thoughts. Grahamedi cannot have this thought because they are very envious. They're constantly thinking of what they don't have. They're constantly looking at others who have things. Yeah. And they are weeping, saying, oh my God, look at them. They have such a good life. Someone who is constantly looking at what they don't have, do not have the ability to give anything in the first place because they are already feeling the lack of everything. Yeah. This is someone who doesn't have anything in the first place. Their heart is empty. What is it which they can give? You can only give what you have. You can't really distribute things that you don't have. So that's the issue. So that's why he's talking and he's making a distinction saying that this cannot come from a Grahamedi. So let's hear the verse again and then we'll move forward. Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. Yeah, they have many subject matters. There are so many different wonderful things they can talk about. They will not talk about the well-being of the entire creation. The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night, either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime, either in making money or maintaining family members. This is Grahamedi. Grahamedi, they are worried about two things, whether eating, sleeping, mating, defending. When there's such heavy emphasis and concern and worry about eating, sleeping, mating, defending, one is in the bodily platform. When one is in the bodily platform, they do not have the ability to think of the well-being of others. They can only be engrossed in their own sense gratification. O descendant of King Bharata, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about and glorify and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is a super soul, the controller and the savior from all miseries. I'm going to stop here because there are certain concepts which we want to talk about in the subsequent session, next session, which are derived from this. Basically here we are glorifying the whole concept of hearing about being Krishna conscious. And the actual solution, a happy person, is one who is Krishna conscious. The more Krishna conscious one is, greater is their happiness. The less bothered they are about the world. In a bad way, in the sense, they're very concerned about the well-being of others, but they're not agitated by the world. So the more Krishna conscious one is, more happy they are. But then what is the source of this happiness? That source of this happiness is a deep satisfaction. There's got to be sambandha. There has to be abhideya, there's prayojana. We'll talk about it in the subsequent session, because greater the level of Krishna consciousness, greater the sambandha with Krishna, greater the level of happiness, which essentially means that your greater is your participation in the grahastha ashram rather than being a grahamedi. Lesser Krishna conscious means greater involvement in the aspects of, I would say, what we would call as greater is the participation in what we would call as the enviousness and etc. Because there's a vacuum which is being filled by material activity. So we'll stop here. We'll see if there are any questions, and then we'll come back again next week to take this further. Is anybody speaking, or is it just silence? I just want to make sure that my earphones are set properly.
We can hear something very faint, some talking.
Okay, faint. That's from the microphone behind me, because there's Sangha going on. Today is Shivratri, yesterday and today.
Oh yes.
Yeah, okay. It's actually extraordinarily auspicious. When we want to talk about enviousness and lack of envy, you got to remember Lord Shiva. Why is Lord Shiva the Param Vaishnav? He is the Param Vaishnav because he is completely non-envious. He is completely non-envious. He would go and then dress himself up in all kinds of clothes and go to the crematorium and hang out with ghosts and goblins and demons, trying to give them a rope so that they could hold on to it and they could be elevated. The extraordinary compassion which is being carried by Lord Shiva is demonstrated by the fact that he makes such extraordinary arrangements to reach out to the jivas so that they could be relieved of their material existence. Yeah? They could be relieved of the material existence. He makes such extraordinary arrangements. He is completely non-envious. An asura comes in front of him, a demon comes in front of him, he doesn't judge the demon. He starts looking for what is good in this person. He starts looking to see that, oh, this person has done so many years of tapasya. We'll have to give him something. We should reward him for that behavior. So he is able to see good even in the worst of entities. That is why he is Param Vaishnav. He is Param Vaishnav because he is the most compassionate. He is the most compassionate and least envious, and he extends himself where everybody should participate. He basically makes all kinds of phenomenal arrangements so that everybody could participate in Krishna consciousness. So he goes down and he meets people who are not even considered to be worthy of his presence. He hangs out and puts on clothes, puts on basically, he kind of participates in an environment which is definitely not very conducive for a Vaishnava. He does so quite deliberately to extend himself to those who can't be delivered otherwise. So since yesterday, there have been celebrations in Vrindavan of the appearance of Shivratri. Shivratri. It's a big, big festival here in Vrindavan. Big. Yeah, there are all kinds of talks and all kinds of things. Everybody is busy. The markets are full of people buying things. All the Shivji temples are full. And he is rightly very dear to the Lord. He is rightly considered the greatest of Vaishnavas. because he's completely non-envious. There's not a shred of enviousness in him. Quite extraordinary if you actually think about it. Great sages sit at his lotus feet, and Mother Parvati sits on his lap. You've seen that particular picture where Mother Parvati is sitting on his lap, and then great sages are sitting at his lotus feet. You see, he doesn't basically hide the fact that he is a grahastha. Mother Parvati sits in embrace. These sages who are sitting at his lotus feet, they don't speak, neither does Lord Shiva. Just by his presence there, they receive transcendental instructions. This is a very, very extraordinary situation where great sages are attracted to him and his association of Lord Shiva, and so are the demons. Can you imagine this? The demons are attracted to Lord Shiva, the ghosts and the goblins are attracted to Lord Shiva, and the great sages are attracted to Lord Shiva. Just consider what kind of a beautiful heart he must be having. Yeah, he must be having such an extraordinarily magnanimous, completely non-envious, loving heart and his nature that everybody is attracted to him regardless of what their personalities are. Yeah, he's considered to be quite, I would say, naive. He is a spiritual master of the whole world. So we're not really talking about someone who doesn't have knowledge, but in his extraordinary desire to accommodate everybody, he sometimes acts out of naivete. He basically extends himself and gives boons to the asuras, the demons, etc. Just as if someone who is very naive, who doesn't have sophisticated knowledge, does so. And the reason why he does it is because he's completely non-envious. He is looking for good qualities, and he finds it. He's saying, okay, you did tapasya, I must reward you. So if I can encourage you to sit and chant, even if you did chant for material purposes, the next time you perhaps would chant for something even better. So let me just encourage you. I don't want to chase you away. So that is being celebrated here for the last 2 days. Last night is Shivratri, and then today they worship Lord Shiva in the different temples. There's Gopeshwar Mahadev. Yeah, very extraordinary personality. Very, very dear to Krishna. Very dear to Krishna because of his nature, because of his extraordinary nature. Dear to everyone, Lord Ram, Krishna, whenever any incarnation appears, all the scriptural work of performing Narasimha Yagya has come from one of the expansions of Lord Shiva. All the Sudarshana mantras have come from him. Ugram Viram has come from him. Yeah? All the padati of how to perform Narasimha Yagya, what mantras to chant, this procedure is given by Lord Shiva. The greatest of Vaishnavas, one of the greatest Vaishnavas, is Rudra, who is a servant of Lord Narasimhadev. That's why all the prayers and the chants and the mantras of Lord Narasimhadev come from Rudra, because he's basically he has great affinity towards Lord Narasimhadev as well. So any major incarnation that you can think of, Lord Shiva is involved. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's somewhat timely given the fact that we're talking about the qualities of a Vaishnava versus the qualities of a Grahamedi. Because he has no material desires, he is transcendentally situated, he is completely non-envious, he's extraordinarily compassionate, he's constantly chanting the holy names. This is perfect example of Grahasthashram, Lord Shiva. He is the Param Vaishnav. He is the Param Vaishnav. No envy whatsoever towards anybody. Anyways, that was nice. We could just talk a little bit about him. We could glorify his nature. Any questions or any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhuji, as we talked about Lord Shiva, so being practicing devotees, is it okay to like we worship him as Param Vaishnav, but what about fasting on like today or yesterday? If we have to fast, like how important is it? Should we do that, or is it okay if we don't do it?
It's basically what we want to do is as follows. We want to follow the tenets given by Srila Prabhupada if you're in a certain parampara. So we have Ekadasi fasting, we have fasting on certain appearance days. If fasting is being indicated in the calendar, then we follow it. It becomes easy for us. This is one way of looking at it to simplify, so that this way we don't really get complicated about what to do and what not to do in terms of different situations. The other perspective is if you have attachment to him, by all means fast. There's nothing wrong. If you have attachment to him, engage in fasting, engage in going to the temple, etc., receiving his blessings. Go with the understanding of who he is. He is a Param Vaishnav. Go with the understanding that you're appearing before someone who is completely non-envious. Appreciate the qualities of a Vaishnav in him. And having his darshan and taking the dust of his lotus feet is extraordinarily glorious. In Vrindavan, Gopeshwar Mahadev sits right at the entrance of the spiritual sky. So the spiritual sky, there's a hub, basically an entrance point to the spiritual sky. The temple of Gopeshwara here in Vraj is right in that particular spot. So if you want to see Vraj when you come for Vrindavan Yatra, the ability to distinguish matter from spirit comes from the Guru. In a similar fashion, the ability to distinguish the Dham from the material covering of the Dham comes from Lord Gopeshwar. If you get his blessings, then when you pay obeisances in the Dham, you will not be worried about dirt and dust, etc. You will be absorbed in the Dham, where you would take each and every dust and particle of the Dham into your hand, and you will start looking at it saying, this is related to Radharani, this is related to Krishna. If you receive blessings from him, he will give you an entrance into the spiritual sky. That's the reason why all yatras should technically begin from him, because he sits at the entrance. He can shift your consciousness to appreciate the Dham. Yeah? So we go there. We go there and pay respects. In the night, sometimes they dress him up as a gopi. In the morning, he's like a shivling where people offer abhishek. In the night, he dresses as a gopi. We go there during both times to receive blessings. He's right 5 minutes away from Vamsivat. Vamsivat is where the rasa dance takes place, the most confidential rasa dance. Lord Shiva sits right there, qualifying and not qualifying people who can enter. So without taking his mercy, one cannot hope to participate in and understand Vraj. Our acharyas, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they used to have a lot of affinity and worship done to Lord Shiva here. Sanatan Goswami, Srila Sanatan Goswami used to visit Lord Shiva in Gopeshwara every day. He used to walk all the way, even in his senior age. He used to walk and then he used to go to this temple. Lord Shiva felt extraordinarily compassionate towards Sanatan Goswami. He felt that at this senior age, you shouldn't be taking this kind of trouble. So Lord Shiva himself appeared in a place which is closer to where the Bhajan Kutir of Sanatan Goswami is. That place is called Bankandi. It's a little bit closer to where Sanatan Goswami is, so that Srila Sanatan Goswami does not have to come down. You hear another pastime. There is Shivji Mandir in Govardhan, and it is called Chakleshwar Mahadev. Srila Sanatan Goswami used to sit there and do bhajan. Just outside of Chakleshwar Mahadev, outside the Mahadev temple, is the Bhajan Kutir of Sanatan Goswami. Wherever, for whatever reason, Lord Shiva was, but Sanatan Goswami used to be there. He used to basically associate and receive a lot of mercy from Lord Shiva. So our own Guru Parampara, they have not hesitated in showing their respect or their affinity for the personality of Lord Shiva in Vraj and Mayapur as well, in different places. Mahaprabhu, he danced in front of Shiva, Lord Shiva's temple in Bhubaneswar. It is known. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that in many ways, sometimes you can say that our own approach to Lord Shiva can be sometimes due to a lack of understanding. But if the understanding is there, then one can appreciate his presence in our lives as the Param Vaishnav. He is the Param Vaishnav. This is a scriptural statement. Read the 4th canto. This is a scriptural statement. He is the greatest of all Vaishnavas. He is. So this is a scriptural statement. Our acharyas have associated with him. Our Guru Varga is associated with him. We know who he is in the hierarchy. Yeah, he is not Jiva, he is not Vishnu, he is Shiva Tattva, he is almost Krishna. Yeah, that's what this is. He is almost Krishna, he's almost Vishnu. So Brahma Samhita talks about him being, Krishna being milk and Lord Shiva being yogurt. Yeah, Krishna is Shira and then Lord Shiva is Dadi in Sanskrit, which essentially means there isn't any difference between milk and yogurt because both are considered to be milk. But there's also a difference because milk can become yogurt, yogurt cannot become milk. So that's how the comparison is between Lord Shiva and Krishna. So the point I'm trying to make is that I think a lot of what we have experienced is due to a lack of understanding and some good quantity of enviousness. And I would say this, sometimes we can also be envious towards great personalities like Lord Shiva. And Krishna warns us of this in the 11th canto. He says, you insult him, you can't approach me. Yeah, he says that. Krishna says in the 11th canto. So we are sometimes envious of this great personality. And we judge him. And we say, oh, this could happen, that could happen. We don't want to go there. He's a demigod. No, he is a Param Vaishnava. If we're sincere, we can receive a lot of mercy from him. Yeah, I hope this answers your question. Yeah.
Yes, of course, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Any other comment or question? Okay, I think if we does anybody have a comment?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yes, I was going to say, how do we reconcile the second offense of the 10 offenses? In the second offense, the name
the
of
second offense of equating the demigods with Krishna. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Right. And Lord Shiva's name is mentioned.
Can you stop talking and listen to me?
Hare Krishna, Mataji, can you put yourself on mute, please?
Your listening skills are getting very bad, aren't they? Are they? Yeah, so fixes it.
How do we reconcile the second offense? There really isn't an offense unless we equate it. If you ever have an opportunity to understand him, he would say chant Hare Krishna. But just as much as we associate with a Vaishnava to chant Hare Krishna, we can associate with him to chant Hare Krishna. The objective doesn't differ. The issue arises when we start thinking that he is the same as Krishna. The issue arises when we start thinking that by chanting his names, one achieves the same benefits as chanting Krishna's names. These are offenses. But when you associate with him for the purpose of receiving mercy, to enter into Krishna's pastimes, that's perfectly in line with our scripture. So that's the answer. I do not know if this was adequate to address your question.
Yes, I think I get it. Yes, it's very important. We don't start thinking of Lord Shiva as Lord Krishna as being the same. There is a distinction, but
There's
at the same
definitely a
time,
distinction. Yeah, that's the reason why he sits here at the gate, and he basically qualifies one to enter into or not enter into Krishna's pastimes. He plays the role of a guru. Just as much as a guru can lift the veil of ignorance, Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya, the veil of ignorance can be removed by the guru, the veil of ignorance can be removed by Lord Shiva. He is the Param Guru. So we approach him with a very good Vaishnava understanding. So to not respect him is an offense. But at the same time, not understanding the glories of Harinam and thinking that you can chant one mantra to compensate for not chanting Harinam, that would be an offense.
okay. Thank you very much. Thank
Sure.
you.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Is there anything else? Any question or comment? Okay. We will gather again the following week, and we want to understand the concept of removing enviousness. What is it that we want to do to remove enviousness? We also want to understand what is the actual steps which Sukadeva Goswami is actually talking about in answering and addressing Srila Parikshit Maharaj's questions. We will understand both the following week. Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. We'll meet again next week. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
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 Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.